Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 15 of the Mingled Yarncast. I'm your host, Steven, also known as KnitFen on Instagram and Ravelry. And welcome back after a long pause. Today, we are going to be talking about a trip that I took recently to Portugal and Spain with a bunch of my students from school. And it's going to be a bit of a travel log, and there's going to be a lot of pictures that I'm going to share throughout. So I would suggest that you might want to turn on the closed captions because, be a lot of images that I'm talking over in this episode. But first, how have you been? It's been a little while. And Ruth Hendricks has told me not to apologize for not making an episode, but I just feel like I have to because I keep intending to make them much, much more frequently. But life and I know I've been promising you all an episode on the book club, so I want to talk to you a little bit about that first. Let's start with that. This is not the book club episode, by the way. That's going to be next. I'm going to do it next week. I promise you, next weekend, it'll happen. And when I say this, I should also say that I'm filming on Sunday, June 9th. I may not post this until tomorrow or Tuesday. So, next weekend from the day of the filming, not the day of the publishing. Anyway, to remind everybody, the book is going to be Vanishing Fleece by Clara Parks. And the way this is going to work is I'm going to do an episode entirely about this book. I'm not going to show any other of my pieces or anything else. We're just going to be talking about the book. I've taken a lot of notes throughout and written down a lot of questions, things that it's made me think about. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. And I'm going to do a little research and share with you some things about some of the people who are mentioned in the book. Because if you have already read it, then you know that as much as it is a book about the American wool industry, it is really about the people in that industry and the stories of their lives and what they're going through and what the industry itself is going through. So, I'm not going to summarize a whole lot. I don't want my episode to replace the reading of the book. That would not be fair. I'm an English teacher, so of course I want you to read the book. I don't want you not to. I want the episode to make you want to if you haven't. But if you have, as I hope you have, then let me tell you this. I've got some prizes to give away during that episode, and I think they're very special, and I think you'll really enjoy them. If you've read the book, then you know that it all begins when Clara Parks, who I think this is her riding on the sheep, and you can look her up on all the social media and also her YouTube channel, which is the Wool channel. Very, very cool. She's got a lot of interesting, informative stuff on there, videos. But anyhow, in the book, the whole premise is she's been gifted a bale of wool, and she's going to take that wool through the whole process of turning it in from a massive box of hair into beautiful, beautiful yarns. But there's lots of steps in that whole process, and so she makes that clear for those of us who use yarn, woolen yarn in particular, on the regular. It's good to know how it's made and where it comes from and all of the different steps, many of which I never really kind of thought about. I mean, when you read about it, you realize, oh yeah, that makes sense, but didn't think about that. Thought about the farmers, thought about the dyers, didn't think about everybody in between. So, and there's a lot. So I think you're really going to enjoy it. However, coming back to the where I started with the premise. So she's gifted a bale from a man named Eugene who owned a farm upstate in New York. And that farm, this book was only a few years ago, like I think 2019 or maybe 2018 was when it was published. The farm still exists. They're still producing wool. They have a flock of Saxon Merino sheep. And as they say, if she writes in the beginning of the book, that Catskill Merino, I believe this is still true, could be, I'm telling you a lie. Not a lie, because that means I intended to tell you a falsehood. And I'm not intending to. I might just be wrong. Let's put it that way. Could be wrong. But I believe that they still only sell online and at the Union Square Farmers Market, which happens, or Green Market, I think they call it, on the weekends in New York City over there. if I duck out of the way and the light changes, you can see it. Also, take a look at the pool. That's where I'm going once I finish filming this. So, about a month ago, I went to the Green Market in Union Square, and I met Susan, who was working at the booth for Catskill Merino, and I got to talk to her a little bit. She was there. She works with Dominique, who is mentioned in the book, and who's the shepherdess of the farm, and does all kinds of stuff. We'll talk later about all the stuff that Dominique is involved in. I don't want to go into it now. But Susan was there selling the yarns that are made from the wool of the sheep that are at that farm. And I bought a few to give to you as a giveaway when we finally get this book club episode up. So let me show you so you can get excited about it. Here is their bag, as you can see, catskillmerino.com, homegrown on our farm. And I bought 3 different skeins, and let's see, I'll start with this one first. This one is a super soft, very, very, raw is not the right word because it is spun, but it's still got like flecks of the farm all throughout. And it's not a rough yarn. It's very, very soft, but it does have brambles. It's got a few brambles tucked into it and little things that will, bring the farm home to you. And it smells nice too. Yeah, this is the first one. All of these are going to be single skeins, and they're good for a hat or something small, but, you'll know what to do with it if you're the winner. So that's the first one. And let me see if it's a worsted weight. I just realized there's a tag here. Let me tell you a little more. Rustic worsted. Discounted for excess VM. I think the excess VM. What is that? She told me what that meant. Something material. It's the stuff that's left in it. Not all of the yarns have the farm in them. But anyhow, that's the one. This one, isn't this pretty? It's sort of a light gray with all kinds of earth tones going through it. And as the tag rolls by, take a look at that, and you will see that this is called Frederick. It is a speckled fingering weight yarn. Susan told me that Frederick is the name of the lamb or the sheep that produced, sorry, I'm misspeaking now. This is not the wool of Frederick, but Frederick was a lamb that was born maybe a year or 2 ago and was one of Dominique's favorites. And he was sickly and sadly did not make it, but he was her personal favorite. And so she dyed this yarn to commemorate him. And so all of the colors are colors that reminded her of Frederick. So that's a very special story to go along this one. Yeah, I just think that's gorgeous. So there's that. Frederick. Next, as I mentioned, the story begins with a man named Eugene. You will be interested to know that this yarn, this skein got a little wonky. That's still kind of skeiny right there. It's this beautiful, I don't know if you can totally see it, but as I move it around, hopefully one of these moments will catch the color correctly, but it's sort of a light gray green. And according to Susan, she recommended this one to me because I told her that I was going to be giving these away and wanted things that were special and sort of referred to the book in some way. The name of this colorway is Weather, and this was the name that Eugene gave to this particular yarn. So he didn't name all of the yarns that they sell, but this one he did. So this is Weather, and despite the mashed up, skeiny wonkiness of it, it is a beautiful, beautiful yarn. And you could be the person who's making something with this in just a couple of weeks. All you have to do is watch the next episode, which will be the book club episode. And I'm going to be giving these away based on people's responses in the comments section. So come ready to talk and chat and interact with your fellow audience members of the Mingled Yarncast. And I will do... Well, here's where I could use your help. I've asked around for ways to kind of safely do giveaways because I feel like it's an easy thing to either, well, scam other people or get scammed, and I don't want that to happen. I want to figure out the best way for me to get your information. And so I am curious, one, if you have been the recipient or the winner of a giveaway, how did the people do it? Just tell me, like, what worked for you? How did you get your address to them? But what I will probably do, most likely, unless somebody has a different idea, is I will make a brief video that I will post just long enough to announce who the winners are. And once I have announced who they are and I've gotten in touch with them, I'll take that video down because nobody else needs to see it after that. So we'll have a special winner video, and I am hoping to do that about a week after I post the next one. So the book club video will stay up forever, but if you want to be a recipient of the giveaway, then you will need to respond within the first week. And that's that, I think. Is there anything else to tell you about it? Again, I apologize for taking so long with it. It's proven trickier than I thought. When I first threw out the idea of doing this, it seemed like, la-di-da, let's do a book club, that's going to be easy. But then the formatting of things kind of tripped me up. And then I started to think about all these extra things that I could do to make it even more engaging. But then as I thought of those extra things to do, it's like, well, how do I get those to you? Like, I want to make some word searches and some puzzles. Like, I'm treating this like a book unit that I'm teaching at school. So there's got to be things to do. But I realize now, like, I'm talking to adults, aren't I? And maybe you would like a word puzzle, but you don't need one. But if I can get you one, I will. Don't worry. But I've got to figure that out. And if I keep trying to figure it out, then it's just going to make me postpone the video even longer. And I don't want to do that. So maybe the next time that can happen. But for now, this. So if you do not have a copy of this book, then there are, of course, many things you could do. My first suggestion is the library. My second suggestion is find your local bookstore and support your small local bookstore. However, if you live in an area that's remote, you are not near a bookstore, and you are going to order it on Amazon, then I would highly recommend that you use the link that I will provide in the description notes, because I recently applied to be an Amazon associate, as several other folks who I know who do yarn podcasts are. And I'm telling you this because I'm required to tell you this, that if you were to use the link that I give you, then I get a little commission from it. So it's a nice way to, put some quarters in my pocket. It doesn't amount to a whole lot, but over time those quarters add up, don't they? As we all know. And but like I said, library first, bookstore second, me third. Okay. Great. One more book recommendation before we get to Portugal and Spain. This is kind of a special one. This is a book that was made by Erin Boyle and Rose Pearlman, and Rose Pearlman is the wife of a colleague of mine. And so he was telling me about her book, and very excited. It's very beautiful. I did post about it on Instagram, and already a couple of people got it and gave it away as gifts, and said they really loved it too. So you don't have to take my word for it. But let me see if I can position myself to show you. Show and tell. The book is not simply dedicated to fiber arts, although there are a lot of fiber art suggestions in it. It's more just dozens and dozens of different ideas of things, DIY things that you can do around the house with all kinds of different materials. And they're elegant, they're really pretty and sophisticated, and Quite nice. So one of the things that I saw in here, I didn't mark the pages, probably should have, but one thing I really loved was this idea of taking old T-shirts and cutting them really thin and rolling it up and using that as a yarn. Doesn't that sound cool? I never thought about that. I have so many pairs of jeans too, where like TMI, but the thighs in my jeans always, I get holes there and I patch them and I patch them, but there comes a point where you just can't patch anymore, and you can't really give them away either. So I'm like, well, what do I do? But now I'm thinking, I'm gonna snip that all up, make like a denim yarn out of actual denim cloth. It's gonna be cool. Anyway, so once again, making things. And again, look for it in your library. If you want to just see it, go to your local bookstore if you would like to buy it, or you can get it from my link shared below. And there we go. All right. Now, what else did I have to tell you before we get to Spain and Portugal? Oh, one other thing that you could do if you wanted to support the podcast is I created a Buy Me a Coffee site, which is kind of like Patreon. Obviously, if you know, and I'm sure many of you do because you are part of this ecosystem. If you are here watching a knitting podcast, then you know about other knitting podcasts, and you know that a lot of people have Patreon pages where they have subscriptions and things like that, and you can pay and subscribe to their channel, and by doing so, you get extra stuff. I thought about doing that, and maybe I will one day, but as of today, I mean, you can see that it takes me a month and a half or two to get an episode done, so I can't ask you to subscribe to anything because what would I give you? What would I have to give? But if you would like to throw $5 at me through Buy Me a Coffee one time, that would be cool. I would dig it. And I would enjoy that coffee, and I'll give you a shout out too. So that is there now as well in the links in the description. Okay, now Spain and Portugal. I always start with Spain and when I list the two, but I should say Portugal and Spain because that was the order in which we went. This was a trip that I did in April, and it was with students. I've spoken about school trips that I've done before. I think the last one, well, I don't think the last one, I didn't know the last one was Japan, and I made a video about that last year and the fun times that we had there, and the yarn and the knitting on top of all of the sightseeing. So this episode, the rest of it, is going to be something like that. We will be talking about Portugal and Spain, and there's a lot of yarn fiber stuff to share. So don't think that we're just going to be looking at Steven's vacation photos. We're not. I've got a lot of knitwear to throw your way. Trying to think of where to begin. Well, the beginning. We took off from JFK. We landed in Lisbon, Portugal, and it was my very first time in Lisbon. I really, really enjoyed it. It's quite a beautiful city, built onto these hills, if you've never been there. And so it has this height to it, but it's not like, I don't know, it's not like other cities where I've seen row of houses, row of trees, row of houses, row of trees. You can kind of see the slope. No, it's all building, 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 building. And so when you look at the slope of the hill, it almost just looks like a stack of buildings. And quite interesting. I mean, not like New York where there are just tall single skyscrapers, but multiple buildings. They're not on top of each other, but they kind of look like they are because they're behind each other. And yeah, so it was a beautiful city to walk around. When we landed there, of course, we flew overnight, and we did not. It was an overnight flight. I didn't sleep. I was really, really wiped out. So when I was there, I didn't do any yarn shopping, although my friend Miguel gave me several people to look up and potentially talk to while I was there to interact with fiber artists that he knows. And I did reach out to some, and we chatted online, but it didn't work out that I was able to meet them. largely because when you're on a school trip as a chaperone, there's a lot of responsibility. I can't walk away freely and just do my own thing. However, in some places, we happen to be walking right where the yarn shops are, and so that makes things a lot easier for me. And anyway, in Lisbon, let me check my notes because I have certain things I want to be sure that I mention. Okay, so we did a few things around Lisbon. We went to Sintra, which is this small town in the mountains. It was a royal getaway, basically. And very interesting because it has a microclimate. It's much cooler and foggier and not hot. And they explained to us the reason why. I don't recall the reason why, but clouds, rain, wind, that kind of thing. And anyway, Sintra was gorgeous. There's a palace there that we walked through, and I've only been to Spain one other time. And only to Seville, as some of you may know if you've watched those episodes. That I was very taken there with all of the Moorish and Muslim influence on the architecture and the design, as anybody who's been there will tell you. The palaces are just floor to ceiling painted with beautiful, beautiful repeating patterns, tiles forever that are just so gorgeous. And here in Portugal, it was the same. In Sintra, especially, I left very, very inspired with things that I want to work into some pattern ideas that I've got. So those will be coming one day soon. So Sintra, gorgeous. That night we came back from Sintra and we attended a fado session in Lisbon. Fado, if you don't know, is a style of music that is very, very Portuguese. Usually sung by a couple of musicians and one solo singer, often with their eyes closed, often evoking a strong sense of melancholy and nostalgia, and very, very beautiful. And we got to attend a session in the back room of a small restaurant. We had dinner there. It was low lighting and just very intimate and really, really beautiful. Definitely check that out if you are ever there. The next day, we went to Belém, which is a neighborhood, one of the neighborhoods of Lisbon, and we saw the beautiful church. I don't know if it's a cathedral. I could be wrong. I think it's not a cathedral. I think it's just a church. We had the local pastry, pastéis de nata, which is general through Lisbon and Portugal, and it's sort of an egg custard cream small pastry. But in Belém, they have their own version, pastéis de Belém. And locals say, or at least they said to us, maybe it was just because we were tourists, I don't know. But they said they were the best, and they were very good. So I'm going to take them at their word. Okay, so after a few days in Lisbon, we got on the road, and we were making our way to the Algarve region, which is the southern part of Portugal. And we passed through this really, really magnificent small city called Évora. And in Évora, where I bought this bag, Évora. And this gives you a sense of the tiles and the general artwork and pattern work that you see all over the place in Portugal. Anyway, the town, I may be misspeaking, but I think the entire town is a UNESCO site, a protected place because of its uniqueness and its cultural value. And anyway, it's got beautiful, beautiful kind of idiosyncratic white architecture that's throughout the small hill town. So as you're approaching it, it stands out. And a lot of medieval architecture that still exists, even in the homes as well. And Roman presence as well. There is a temple that's left there from Roman times. So you get this great mix of Roman relics and things from the Muslim era, things from the medieval Christian era, and of course things from the modern period as well. And it's just a great blend. It's really, really cool. And while I was there, I purchased this little thing, which not specifically knitting related, although I intend to use it as such, as a small little notions bag. You can see it's the size of my hand. But what you may not be able to see Now you probably can. It's made of cork. That is one of the main industries in Évora, cork, and making things with it. And so we learned a lot about the process of making things with cork. And yeah, maybe you can see it this way. It's very flexible. I didn't expect that. I guess I have not encountered cork anywhere besides a wine bottle, or maybe a cork board. So I didn't think of it as being a bendy textile. Really, I mean, that's what this is. It's made of wood, but it's a textile. Isn't that cool? So that was purchased there in Évora. Also in Évora, one of the cool places to see is the Chapel of Bones. And there it's, well, it is what it says. It's a chapel with floor-to-ceiling bones, skulls, femurs, you name it. And yes, it's a bit macabre, but as it was explained to us, there was an old cemetery, an ancient cemetery that was being, I can't remember the reason it was being dug up, but it was being dug up, and the people's bones were brought to this chapel. Now, they were explained to us, they said, you might think that that would be a desecration, but for the people who did this, and this is going back hundreds of years, of course, it was an honor to bring these people's bones closer to the altar in the chapel. So I'll let you do with that what you will. In any case, it's very interesting, very, very interesting. And anyhow, and another thing to tell you, peacocks. They're just peacocks walking around in this place. Really, really pretty. Climbing on all the ruins of medieval things and just, hanging out and looking gorgeous. So that's kind of fun. From there, we made our way further south to the Algarve. Oh, but now that I'm looking at my notes, there are two things I wanted to tell you. One, I forgot to tell you about food. So in Lisbon, a friend told me, she said, as long as you're in Portugal, just eat octopus everywhere. So I did, or not everywhere, but a few times, and it was delicious. I looked online to see other things that I needed to try because I like to do that before I travel. I like to see what the local things are that I'm supposed to know about. And I was told grilled sardines are a big thing. Now, I love sardines. I eat canned sardines all the time. I know some people find them off-putting. I find them delicious. So I thought that I would really like grilled sardines, and I had them in Évora, and it was not my favorite thing that I've ever eaten. I wouldn't recommend it, at least not from there. Maybe closer to the water, because it's a little bit inland, but still not that far inland. Anyway. So that was one thing I needed to share with you. Also, in the bus, so on these trips we have a lot of time in the buses, and that for me is a lot of knitting time. So as I'm looking out at the landscape and daydreaming and whatnot, I'm sitting there with the needles making stuff. And I didn't start these socks while I was there, but I finished them while I was there in the bus. And these were made for a friend, and I meant to give them to her at her wedding 2 or 3 weeks ago. Not as her wedding gift. I gave her a proper wedding gift, but in addition to that, these are, the colors are reversible, as you can see. And these are following the pattern by Alice Yu from Socktopus. However, I did alter it quite a bit because it's the V-Junkie pattern. I'll put a link to it below. As it's written, it only calls for one yarn, so it's good for a variegated yarn. I've used this pattern several times in the past. I think this is the 4th pair of these that I've made, but it's the first time that I've done the honeycomb bits with a different yarn. So I use 2 different yarns. Both of the yarns are from Murky Depths, which I purchased at Knitty City, and it was fun to make, and I finished them there, and now I need to get them in the mail. Maybe when I'm sending the giveaway prizes for the book club, I will also get these in the mail at that point. So, first finished object from the trip. Only finished object from the trip, but I did start another pair, but we'll get to those later. So, those are the socks. The Algarve. We were down south. We stayed in a town called Altura, But we went and visited, and Altura is closer to Spain, but we drove out to the eastern coast of Portugal, southern Portugal, and we visited the most southeastern point, no, I'm lying, southwestern point of continental Europe is in Portugal. And it's gorgeous. It's called Sagres, and there are cliffs everywhere. And we got to walk along the cliffs. We got to visit a fortress that's there along the cliffs as well, and the park that's attached to it. Really, really stunning. I highly, highly recommend it. The only place that I've been that felt kind of similar to it was the Cliffs of Moher in Ireland. I'm sure there are other dramatic cliffs elsewhere, but I have not visited that many. Oh, Dover too. Although Dover is very different and special. But yeah, this felt more like the Cliffs of Moher. And just dramatic scenery. The ocean, the cliffs, the greenery, the wind. It was beautiful, and I highly recommend it. From there, we went to a town called Lagos, and that just happens to be a town where one of my friends, Gina, from my Shakespeare program that I attended in 2015, we're both alums of this program, and she has, in the last couple of years, moved to Portugal, and happens to be living in that very town. Now, I can't stress this enough. It is unusual that on a school trip, we would pass through the exact town where someone I know lives. That doesn't usually happen. I reached out to her beforehand, and I knew she was in the area, but I didn't know she was going to be living about 10 minutes from where the bus dropped us off. So that was very cool. We got to have lunch together and spend the day, and it was wonderful. So Lagos is a really pretty town. There are these caves and beautiful rock formations along the cliffy coast. The cliffs are not as tall as they are in Sagres, but in fact, a lot of people will jump off of them. You wouldn't do that in Sagres, way too high. But in Lagos, some people were. Not me, not my students, but others in the area. But you can do boat tours through there, and it's really cool. Definitely worth checking out as well. And very, very relaxed. So if you want like a relaxed beach vacation with some cultural things to do, southern Portugal is perfect. Okay. Checking notes again. From there, we made our way into Spain, and our first stop was in Seville. So in Seville, I traveled all the way across the ocean in April with the sweater that I had made for the occasion of going there in 2021? When was I there? 22. I think it was in 2022 that I was there before. Yeah, November 22. And I made the Sevilla sweater, which was the sweater that I was working on while I was also in the production of Carmen. Carmen, as you may know, is set in Seville, and I was in a production of Carmen one weekend, and I was in Seville that following weekend, so it was just kind of funny how that worked out. But anyway, I brought the finished sweater back because I was working on it while I was in the production and visiting the first time, but I brought the finished piece back so that I could wear it there, and I had a picture from 2 years ago when I was making it in the Plaza de España. Is it Plaza? I don't know when I'm supposed to do the TH thing in Spanish, but I think the Z's are Plaza de España. No, España. It's España, isn't it? Someone explained the rules to me, and I don't remember. There are actual places where that sound goes. Anyway, in the Plaza de España, I was working on it in 22, and brought it back, wore it there, took some pictures, so that was fun. And actually, it was a cooler morning than I anticipated. It was hot in the afternoon. I definitely did not need a sweater in the afternoon, but in the morning, yeah, I could wear it legitimately, not just for the gram, but for real, because it was sweater weather in the mornings there. It was nice. So we were there a little bit longer, walked around town. We didn't stay the night in Seville, and I'm glad that I was there 2 years ago, because that trip we just stayed for, I think, 3 nights and 4 days, or 4 nights, 5 days, something like that, and really got to know the city well. This was just sort of passing through on our way to our next stop, which was along the Costa del Sol. And anyhow, there's not much more to tell you about that because we did some sightseeing, walking around, and saw some of the things that I'd seen previously. But it was fun to see them with the students. One of the best things about traveling with high schoolers is getting to see things through their eyes and getting to see what gets them excited and eager to discuss, talk, and travel more. So there's a lot of moments like that throughout the trip, but especially in Seville. It's a very unique place if you've never been there. Okay, next. Oh, you know what? I forgot something. So by now I've probably put up the pictures of Sagres, but I didn't talk to you about the sweater that I made for this trip. I talked about it in the previous episode, but here it is again in case you forgot. And I'll put it on. By the way, this is what I was feeling like today as I was preparing to finally make this episode. I was channeling my inner Madeline Kahn from Clue. Flames from the side of my face. I'm not losing my mind in that way necessarily, but there's a lot going on at the moment in my world and a lot of things to, well, not be antsy about. I'll just say there's a lot going on and leave it at that. Good things, very good things. Bad thing right now. My computer's telling me it's got low battery, so I've got to find a way to plug this in. There's probably going to be a moment here of pause, and I'll be back in just a second. Okay, I'm back. We're plugged in. We're not going to stop this now. But we did have to change our perspective a little bit here because I had to move the computer to plug it in. Anyhow, here is the Gan of La Mancha. A bit about this, as I've mentioned before. This is done with wool, Manchelopi wool from Wooldreamers, which is from the area of La Mancha, which is an area that we did not actually visit on this particular trip. But that didn't stop me from making a bad pun, and hopefully no one's upset about that. Anyway, if you recall from the previous video when I was talking about it, I'm just going to move around so you can see this from different angles. I mentioned to you that this particular yarn, the Manchelopi, is very, very rugged and wild and loose, and it falls apart if you just give it the slightest, not the slightest tug, but just slightly more than the slightest tug. And so I worried that it would, fall apart when I was wearing it. It did not. I am happy to report that what it did do is it just became, gravity did its thing and pulled down on it a bit. Sitting on buses did its thing and not felt it. That's not what happened, but it just got softer. It just got worn a little bit more, and it's become very soft. Sorry, as I very inelegantly sprawl about the couch. And yeah, so it's very light. I can't really describe enough to you how light it is when I compare it to my Ranger cardigan, which I've shown many times. If you ball that up and hold it, that is a heavy piece of clothing. This, it's a lot of material, but in your hands it feels like it's nothing. And when you're wearing it, it feels like it's nothing. But it's warm. And it's warm when it needs to be warm, but it's cool enough to where even when it's, kind of hot out, it's not overly hot. So it was perfect. It was the perfect garment to have with me on this trip as we went in and off of buses. Like I said, mornings and evenings were sweater weather anyway. And even throughout the day, going into, dark medieval spaces, they're often very cool. And, a sweater works. And so I can't recommend it enough. I love the Manchelopi wool. Check out Wooldreamers. I'll put a link down there for you. But yeah, you should definitely try something with this. Now, I will tell you one thing, and this is more to do with the pattern that I chose to do. I blended two patterns, as I mentioned before. It was the Ranger cardigan and the Atlas pullover from Josh Bennett. And the Atlas pullover is what gives us these... what is it, a 1x3 rib. And so these, knit stitches that are here, they are, each row you knit through the back loop and then on the way back skip it, so that's why they get elongated a bit. It means they're very loose, and it means that they can get caught on things, and they did. And I think maybe here you can see. Oh, there's a place. There's a case of it. They did get caught, and they ripped a little bit. But the good news is that this yarn has so much tooth to it that all I really needed to do was take a crochet hook and pull that through to the inside, and as I wore it, it just felted to the sides. So it's not falling apart. I don't think it could if it wanted to. So yeah, that's another great quality of the yarn. You can get a little hole, but it's a pretty easy fix, I think. So yeah, check it out. Okay, but right now, it's June in New York, and I'm not going to keep this on. Just stare at Madeline Kahn a little bit longer while I get this off. Okay, so that was great. Next, we went to Malaga. We stayed in the town of Malaga, and in the town of Malaga, we didn't do a whole lot. Our hotel was there, but it was really our jumping off point to get to Gibraltar first, and the next day to Granada. But Gibraltar. So in Gibraltar, funny enough, the students, a lot of them said that was their favorite part of the trip. Not because they're English speaking there, not because it's part of the UK. It was because of the monkeys. The monkeys and the mountains and the fact that you could see Morocco in the distance, and we had a beautiful day when we were there, so you could see across the Mediterranean. And for me, something that was really fascinating, I mean, I don't know, this whole trip, because I'd never been to these places, I didn't have expectations of what I was going to see. I was just very open to everything. So for me, I loved the World War II tunnels that go all through the Rock of Gibraltar. There's something like 10 miles of tunnels through that iconic mountain. They were able to move like the whole city, of the whole population in there during the war, of the people who stayed. Crazy. And I also didn't know that just like something 9 miles off of the coast from right there was where the Battle of Trafalgar took place. And as somebody who used to work in Nelson House, where Lord Admiral Nelson's father lived, and where Nelson himself surely visited, since he bought the house for his father, he's near and dear to my heart. And anyway, so that was cool for me. I really enjoyed all of the history, all the different eras of history that we got to learn about through the visit to Gibraltar. And I like the monkeys too. Let's not lie, the monkeys are pretty cool. From there, we went to Granada, and in Granada we saw the Alhambra, and that was a really big milestone. That's one of those places I've known about my whole life, heard about here and there, and it was fun to finally see it. And there's lots to say about it. That I'm not going to say, because I could go on forever. But one interesting thing to me was, as we were walking up, there was a little building across the street near the entrance. I think it was a hotel, and it was named the Washington Irving Hotel. And I was like, Washington Irving? Why is there a place at the Alhambra named after him? And then when we got inside the palace, fortress, I don't palace, I think is probably the better word. We saw there's a room with a big plaque dedicated to Washington Irving, because he had come there during his lifetime to write something else. I'm forgetting the story now. I don't know if he came to do a biographical piece about someone, but he was so taken by the Alhambra, what he ended up writing about was the Alhambra, and it became this book, The Tales of the Alhambra by Washington Irving, with lots of gorgeous pictures. And anyway, I'm not going to show you everything here, but it's a really beautiful thing for tourists. And writing, which I'm eager to delve into. I haven't done so yet, but I will. So there at the Alhambra, we spent some time walking around, walking through the gardens. The gardens are really gorgeous. The roses blew me away. I don't well, I sometimes take pictures of flowers. I mean, I love flowers. Who doesn't? But I really just basically had a photo essay of all of the roses that I saw. I was really taken by them, and then learned later on, I didn't even know this going into it, that it's famous for its roses. I could see why. Okay. From there, let's see. Knitting moment. I wore my Lascaux Henley there when I was at the Alhambra. Here's a picture of it for you. And that was the shirt that I made for the trip to France last year when I saw the Lascaux caves. And yeah, brought it back, wore it again. Probably going to bring it back this summer when I go to the UK and Ireland. But that's another day and another story. Okay, we went then from Granada to Valencia. And in Valencia, along the way, I began a new project. And it was this. You may recall this Zauberball that I bought at Lake Erie last year. I finally started knitting with it, with my double pointed here, making a sock. It's going to be a very long sock, as you can see. I mean, here's the heel, but, you know, leg warmers. This is just following, I'm just freehanding it. What's the word I'm looking for? I guess that's it. No pattern, I'm just doing my own pattern, and one that I've done before, but I love the development of this. And even though I bought it in Northern Ohio, isn't it giving Spain? I mean, come on. The yellow and the red and the colors, it's perfect. So this was fun to sit in the bus and work with while I was en route to Valencia. And while I was in Valencia, I did finally visit a yarn shop. We had some free time, and so I went on my Google Maps, and I found the closest one to me. And it was a little shop. I'm forgetting the name, but I'm going to post the name here so that you will know it, because I'm going to have to look it up. But I don't even think they had a website, if I recall. But great little shop. Very interesting. I walked in. There were about 3 or 4 customers in addition to the owners, or I don't know if they're the owners, but the people working. And they were all men. Like 7 or 8 people in this place. And they were all men, which I've just never encountered at a yarn shop before. But that was very cool. And it was a great moment for me because I was free to talk with people who couldn't speak English, so I was forced to use Spanish. I should say that my travel compatriots, the other chaperones, are all Spanish teachers. 2 are Spanish teachers, but 1 is a native Spanish speaker, and we had a tour guide who was with us, and she's fluent in English and Spanish both as well, but she's a native speaker of Spanish. So I tried to join in with them, but they would always, flip to English just to make things easy, even though I really wanted them to speak Spanish all the time. But at this moment, I had my chance, and it was great, and I did very well. I was able to talk to the, again, I don't know if it was the owner or not, but seemed to be, or the manager at least, talk to him about the projects that I was working on and things that I was looking forward to doing. And I purchased there 10 balls of this. I'm not going to show you all 10. You don't need to see all 10. But 10 balls of this recycled denim made out of cotone riciclato in Italian. Yeah, I'm going to make a t-shirt out of these. And I'm going to do it with a pattern, well, not a stitch pattern that's from the Vogue Knitting Stitch collection that I tried to do last year with my Lascaux Henley, but it wasn't working and I was on a deadline and I just couldn't get it to work right. But now, a little calmer, with time to figure out how to do it right, I want to go back to that idea, but use this yarn. I think it'd be really, really nice and light and perfect for summer. So that is something that's going to be coming up, and this was yarn that I purchased in Valencia. Then, from there, I didn't talk about the paella. I had lots of paella valenciana, and it was delicious. And in fact, even in Barcelona, I continued to eat the paella. I really, really enjoyed it, and highly recommend it if you go there. I also, in Valencia too, there's a church, the cathedral there, has what is believed to be the Holy Grail. As it happens, it is not a wooden cup, as Indiana Jones would have us believe. The one that is in the cathedral is simple, like the movie makes it out to be. And actually, maybe it is wood, but it's been ornamented over time. And you know how these goes with medieval relics. Is it the real thing? I don't know. But have people been flocking to it and making pilgrimages to it and bringing all of their energy and their love and devotion and faith to it for 800 years? Yes. So just going there and seeing there and experiencing that energy and that, that fascination and devotion is really, really cool. So I enjoyed getting to sit there and just pray and meditate and be in the presence of that history, because it's very cool. So we then, from Valencia, we went to Barcelona, and there we were there for a couple of days. We ended our trip in Barcelona, and we saw all of the sort of the main sites in the medieval district. It has a name, and I'm not remembering the name of it, but the streets are all windy, and it's a great place to just walk and get lost, with lots of little restaurants and taverns and shops and things, including the shop All You Knit Is Love. And it was funny because we're walking through these medieval streets, and I was walking in the back. We had 30 students, I think, around that number. So we have a couple of chaperones at the front, a couple at the back, making sure that everybody stays together. So I was in the back, and I hear people screaming, "Mr. Weber! Mr. Weber!" I'm like, oh God, what's going on? Why do they need me? So I rush up, and they're like, "It's a store for you!" I'm like, oh, you're right. It is a store for me. All you knit is love. And so I didn't stop there at that moment because we were en route to another place, but we had free time throughout the day to come back and see things again. And so that is when I returned, and I purchased this yarn and another mohair. This is a mohair. This one is merino, 100% merino. And the store owner, Jennifer, is an American. It was funny as I walked in, and she welcomed me, and we were chatting. I'm like, I don't think you're Spanish, are you? Although she's lived there for 20 years, and maybe I don't know what her current citizenship is, didn't ask, but she's from Arizona. Imagine that. And she dyes a lot of her own stuff and sells it. So this is one of her pieces, and I got a mohair that went along with this, and I'm going to show you it separately because it is what I've got in the Avora bag here. Here is this mohair that goes very nicely with this merino, and she had as her sample in front of these yarns her version of Andrea Maury's Birds of a Feather. Why couldn't I think of that? And I recognized it just as I picked it up because I made one. That was my Tori Amos knit, if you may remember. And even when I made it last year, I thought to myself, I'm going to make this again because I didn't make it the way that it's meant to be made. I used all merino wool throughout, but it's written to use merino or some kind of wool or some material, and then a mohair or something much, much lighter. And so I picked up hers, and I thought, yes, I'm going to do this with these yarns. And that is what I'm doing. I'm not going to tell you too much about it right now, other than to hold it up and just show you the progress, as you can see. I started it as soon as I got back, which is unusual for me because usually I don't start things right away with my travel yarns, but I did with this one because it was the end of April, and all around Hoboken the lilacs were in bloom, and this is a very lilac-y color, as you can see. So I wanted to get it started so I could take some pictures with the lilac in Hoboken. And then as I got working on it, I realized this is going to be a perfect gift for a friend in England, where I'm going to be going in a few weeks. So, now that I'm working on it, I need to get it done so it's ready for that trip. And I will talk to you more about it in the episode leading up to that trip which will follow the book club episode, which is all going to get done in 2.5 weeks. Isn't it great how somehow I can't get a video done in 2 months, but in 2.5 weeks I'm going to do 3 or 4? Oh well. So that was All You Knit Is Love. Beautiful shop. Highly, highly recommend it. And she sells yarns, not just her own, but many of her own. And it was fun to get to chat with her, and some of the other people who were knitting there. One of whom was from Cleveland, Ohio. I don't recall her name, but if you're watching, hello to a fellow Ohioan. Okay, so that was, as I said, our trip ended in Barcelona. It was an amazing experience throughout. It went so fast because all of these different places, I mean, gosh, we stopped in 8 different towns and cities, I mean, of different sizes. And we just, go from start to finish. And so it's this wash of experiences. And then when it's done, you're like, wow, that was amazing. But wow, it went fast. And the month since I've been back has also gone very quickly. In fact, month and a half almost. So I think that is probably a good place to end. Oh no. Sneak peek. So I mentioned the next trip is going to be to England and to Ireland. No more details about that because I am going to make an episode. But you may recall that I was working on the sweater vest, the Fall River vest, and I was using my yarns from that I purchased from the Scottish Yarn Festival. And the design is by Mary Jane Mucklestone. I'm going to talk about this in much more depth in this future episode, but I finished the piece, and I'm just going to quickly show it to you. Don't blink or you'll miss it, but I just want you to see the beauty that is this thing. Oh my God. Isn't it gorgeous? I'm not going to put it on yet, but I will for you next time. So this is the Fall River vest. It was, I want to say it's a labor of love. That makes it sound like it was a chore. It wasn't a chore. It was a joy. It was truly a labor of love because I loved making it, and I was sad when it was done, but also happy that it was done because now I'm excited to wear it, and I'm going to have a fun opportunity to wear it in England, and more on that later. Now, another thing, I have, and also in preparation for this trip, back in January at Vogue Knitting Live, I purchased yarn from Toft UK, and they specialize in yarns and patterns specifically for crocheting animals. And I, therefore, got this yarn because I loved the things that they had on display. They were really beautiful, kind of classic stuffed animals. And I was like, well, let me do that. I'm finally going to learn how to do this. So that was in January. It's now June, and I am finally learning how to crochet. Now, don't go and call me Crochet Fen just yet. Knitting is still a little more my expertise and my speed. But here's a bunch of, body parts for this sheep. But it's coming along. It's coming along. And now I can finally say that I do know how to crochet, at least the basics. And I hope to have this done before going to England. So I have 3 things that I need to finish. The sweater, which is done. The shawl, which is getting there, and this. And I've got these videos to make. And here's one more thing, completely unrelated, but my family is having a great big family reunion in August. All of the descendants of my great grandfather are getting together in Cincinnati, and I volunteered to type up the family history into a digital format. There's one that another relative already made and did all the research, so I'm just digitizing it so that others can have access to it more easily. But I'm also adding pictures and kind of like 21st century-ifying it. She made this in the early 90s, late 80s. And so I volunteered to do that too. And that needs to be done by August. And my trip goes until pretty much July 18th. So I've got to work on it now. And I'm doing all of that on top of finishing the school year. And I sound like I'm showing off with all of the stuff that I'm doing, and I'm really not. I'm actually just sharing this with you to let you know that I'm sitting here thinking to myself, are you crazy? Are you a madman? Why? But because it's all self-imposed. But we're going to see what we can do. I work well with the deadline. So, okay, that's that. And I hope I will have this up for you in a day or two. It's going to take some time to get all those pictures in, but I hope you enjoy it. I hope to see you next time. And get the books, follow the links, and be well, everybody, until we meet again.